Jon Snow put his hand in fire and got burned. Not a plot hole. Not a mistake. That was the entire point. And somehow, the fandom completely missed it. Somewhere between Season 1 and the moment Daenerys walked out of that funeral pyre, millions of people decided that Targaryen blood means fire cannot touch you. That if your last name ends in Targaryen, flames are basically just a warm hug. So when Jon Snow torched his hand down to the bone-saving Lord Commander Mormont from a Wight, fans just quietly pretended it did not happen, filed it away as a writing error the show would fix later. The show never fixed it, because there was nothing to fix. By the end of this video, the version of Jon Snow you thought you understood is going to look completely different. Not worse, just real, and honestly, more interesting. So let's go back to where this actually happened, because the details matter. Season 1, Episode 8, Castle Black.
Snow! Come on!
One of the dead bodies the Night's Watch brought back from beyond the wall reanimates inside the Lord Commander's quarters and goes straight for Jeor Mormont. Jon Snow runs in, grabs a nearby lantern, and throws it at the creature along with some burning curtains. The Wight catches fire. Mormont lives, and Jon Snow's right hand gets burned so badly it has to be wrapped in silk bandages halfway up his forearm. Now, here is the thing most people forget or choose to ignore. In the books, George R.R. Martin does not gloss over this injury. He describes it in full. At the time of the fight, Jon felt nothing, adrenaline, shock, whatever you want to call it. But the pain came after. His skin cracked and turned red and started weeping fluid. Blood blisters the size of roaches rose up between his fingers. He could barely use the hand for days. Mormont gave him Longclaw, the Valyrian steel sword, specifically because of what Jon sacrificed saving his life. This is the first book, the first season, and George R.R. Martin is already showing you clearly that this man is not fireproof. The burn was real, the scars were real, and the idea that Jon's Targaryen blood should have prevented all of that is based on a misunderstanding that the show accidentally made a lot worse. Where did the misunderstanding come from? Season 1, Daenerys Targaryen walks into Khal Drogo's funeral pyre. The blood witch Mirri Maz Dur is already burning inside it. The fire takes everything, the tent, the body, the witch. And Daenerys steps out of the ashes the next morning, not a mark on her, with 3 baby dragons hatching around her feet. That scene is genuinely one of the greatest moments in the entire series. It earned its place, but it planted a belief in the audience that quietly became a rule. Targaryens cannot burn. Except George R.R. Martin already told everyone this was wrong. Back in 1999, before the TV show, before most of the internet even knew what Game of Thrones was, he answered a fan question about this in an online Q&A, and he was so frustrated with the misconception that he wrote his answer in all caps. His exact words, "Targaryens are not immune to fire. The birth of Dany's dragons was unique, magical, wondrous, a miracle. She's called the Unburnt because she walked into the flames and lived, but her immunity to fire is not a permanent condition. That is not a theory. That is not up for debate. That is the man who created all of this telling you directly. What Daenerys survived was a once-in-history event, a specific combination of factors that will never be repeated. Mirri Maz Dur's life burning as a blood sacrifice. Drogo's death feeding the ritual. 3 dragon eggs that had been dormant for over a century sitting inside the flames at exactly the right moment. Something in that specific night produced a miracle that had nothing to do with genetics and everything to do with magic behaving in a way it had never behaved before. And in the actual books, not the show, Martin reinforces this. Later in the story, at the fighting pits of Meereen, Daenerys burns her hands pulling a spear from Drogon's side. She's not casually immune to fire. She never was. This show kept letting her walk through flames because it looked incredible on screen, and in doing so, it accidentally told the audience a lie that stuck. Now let's go through the history of House Targaryen, because this history will end any argument fast. Aerion Targaryen. You might know him as Aerion Brightflame, which is what he called himself, because he was deeply convinced he was a dragon in human form. This man was a prince of the royal house. Pure Valyrian blood. Silver hair, violet eyes, the whole thing. One night he drank a cup of wildfire, the alchemical green fire that burns hot enough to melt stone. because he believed it would transform him into an actual dragon. He died screaming. And this is not some obscure piece of side lore. It gets referenced multiple times in the books. Jorah Mormont tells Jon Snow about Aerion directly at Castle Black, saying the gods were kind, and the wildfire turned Aerion into a corpse rather than a dragon. The characters in the story know Targaryens are not fireproof. It is common knowledge in Westeros. The fandom built a myth that the people living inside the world never believed. Then there is the tragedy at Summerhall. Aegon V, Aegon the Unlikely, if you know the Dunk and Egg stories, was a Targaryen king who tried to hatch dragon eggs through a massive fire ritual. The attempt went wrong and burned the entire castle down. Aegon V died in that fire. His son Prince Duncan died in that fire. Several other Targaryens died in that fire. Targaryens, all of them, dead in a fire they started themselves. Then there is the Dance of the Dragons, which House of the Dragon is telling right now. During that civil war, Targaryens burned and scarred each other constantly. Aegon II was burned so badly by dragonfire that he spent the rest of his reign being carried everywhere on a litter, requiring milk of the poppy just to tolerate existing. Rhaenyra Targaryen, the main character of that entire conflict, was burned by a dragon before it devoured her. Her own brother's dragon, set ablaze, then eaten in pieces. And then there is Viserys, Daenerys' brother, the one Khal Drogo executed by pouring molten gold over his head. George R.R. Martin has specifically pointed to Viserys' death as proof that Targaryens have no immunity to extreme heat. The man melted. Fire has been killing Targaryens for as long as Targaryens have existed. The family that rides dragons is not the family that cannot be burned by them. The whole history of the Targaryens is people finding that out the hard way. So if Jon's hand burning is not a continuity error, what is it actually telling us? It is telling us what his inheritance really is. And it is not what most people think. Yes, Jon Snow is half Targaryen. His father was Rhaegar Targaryen, the crown prince, Aerys' son. That part of the story everybody knows, especially after the Season 7 reveal. But his mother was Lyanna Stark of Winterfell, a Stark from the north, with the blood of the first men in her veins, the same blood that has run through that family since before the Andals ever crossed the Narrow Sea. And that Stark blood is not just scenery. It is not background detail to explain why Jon likes snow. That blood carries something specific, something magical, something the Targaryens never had and could never have. It makes you a warg. Skin changers, people who can push their consciousness into an animal and see through its eyes, feel what it feels, control what it does, are a product of the blood of the first men. That ability shows up across the north and beyond the wall specifically because those people kept the old connection with the land and the animals alive. It is not a Valyrian power. Valyria was built on fire magic, on blood sorcery and dragon binding. The blood of the first men runs cold and old and deep in a completely different direction. Every Stark child bonded to a direwolf shows this. Bran is the most extreme case. A full green seer who can look through weirwood trees across time. Arya runs with Nymeria in her dreams even after the wolf is gone from her side. Robb had a connection with Grey Wind that people around him noticed. And Jon Snow, in the books, is walking into Ghost constantly. Mostly while he sleeps, without even meaning to. He wakes up with blood on his tongue and the smell of pine in his head, and he does not want to spend too much time thinking about what that means. The wildling Varamir Sixskins, one of the most powerful wargs in the entire story, a man who has had 6 animals under his control at once, sees Jon Snow and Ghost together, and thinks that if he had what Jon has, he would be a king. That is how strong the bond is. This is Jon Snow's actual magic. Not fire, ice and bone and old earth. The north, Ghost, the weirwoods, the old gods. His Targaryen blood gives him the dragon connection, and the show does show this quietly, in the moment Drogon lets Jon touch him, and Daenerys' face goes still because she cannot understand what she is seeing. Dragons do not let strangers put their hands on them. The fact that Drogon allows it means something, but dragon bonding and fire immunity are two completely different things. One is real. The other was never on the table. The magic inside Jon Snow runs in 2 directions at once, and they do not point the same way. Fire and ice pulling against each other inside the same body. It is literally in the title of the series, and the fire side does not win by default. Here is where it gets really specific, and this is the part of the conversation that most people never reach. What is Jon Snow after he comes back from the dead? Because Melisandre does not just wake him up. She does not hit a restart button. What she does, what Thoros of Myr did to Beric Dondarrion 6 times before Jon, is something George R.R. Martin has a name for. In a 2017 interview with Time magazine, Martin was explaining what happens to people the Lord of Light resurrects. He said about Beric Dondarrion, "He's not a living human being anymore. His heart isn't beating, his blood isn't flowing in his veins. He's a Wight, but a Wight animated by fire instead of by ice. A fire Wight." The White Walkers build an army of ice Wights, dead bodies raised and animated by cold magic controlled by the Night King. The Lord of Light, it turns out, does something structurally similar. He raises dead bodies using fire magic. The body is the vessel. The Lord of Light's power is what makes it move, but the key word is vessel. The body is still a body. Flesh, bone, blood. It does not transform. It does not become something supernatural at the physical level. The magic animates it. It does not fireproof it. Beric Dondarrion died 6 times. He carries every scar from every death. His body does not heal back to what it was. Each resurrection erases more of who he used to be, his memories, his sense of self, pieces of his personality. He forgets things, people he used to know, places he grew up. He told Arya that he can barely remember his life from before all of this started. The Firewhite resurrection keeps you walking. It does not make you whole. Jon Snow comes back from the dead and he's the same way. He still has the burns from Season 1. He comes back with the same vulnerabilities he died with. Cold steel still kills him, as his own Night's Watch brothers proved. He comes back quieter, harder. The actor Kit Harington talked about this. Jon saw what was on the other side of death, which was nothing. No afterlife, no gods waiting, just darkness, and that hollows a person out. That is the Firewhite's toll. Being brought back by the Lord of Light makes you a soldier. It does not make you a god. It does not grant you powers. It gives you a purpose and asks you to carry the cost of being alive when you should not be. The last thing worth saying is the one people argue against most, but it is the one that holds the whole story together. What would actually happen to this story if Jon Snow were fireproof? If dragonfire rolled off him? If he could walk through a burning building and come out clean? If he shared whatever version of Daenerys' miracle the show decided to keep giving her? He stops being a person. He becomes a power fantasy. And the entire reason Jon Snow works as a character, the reason people care about him, the reason his story hits differently from every other hero, is that he bleeds. He fails. He dies. He carries burns on his hand from a fight in Season 1. He gets 5 knives in the chest from people he trusted. He crosses the wall on foot into an army of the dead with nothing but Valyrian steel and a handful of people he loves. The stakes are real because the man is mortal. The prophecy points to him. The dragons accept him. The blood magic recognizes him, and none of that changes the fact that he still has to survive inside a human body with human limits in a world that will kill him if he makes one wrong move. His Targaryen blood is the claim, the dragons, the lineage. His Stark blood is the warging, the north, the ability to feel the cold the way the first men always did. His resurrection makes him a Firewhite, a dead man kept walking for a purpose that even he does not fully understand. And across all 3 of those things, fire immunity appears nowhere. It was never promised to him. It was never part of who he was built to be. The myth that Jon should be fireproof came from one scene with Daenerys that even George R.R. Martin said was a one-time miracle. It came from a show that kept repeating that miracle because it looked spectacular. And it came from fans who wanted Jon to be the ultimate Targaryen so badly that they ignored everything in the books designed to show he is something else entirely. He is not the ultimate dragon. He is the thing that comes after dragons, the bridge between 2 ancient and opposing forces that have been at war with each other since before Westeros had a name. Fire and ice, life and death, Valyrian blood and first men bone, and he burns, exactly like you would, which is the only version of Jon Snow that was ever going to save the world. If this got you thinking differently about Jon, drop a comment below. I want to know where you land on this. And if you are the kind of person who wants to go deeper into the lore that the show buried or got completely backwards, subscribe. We do this regularly. There is a lot of story in these books that most people never got to see.